Good? All right, cool. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. I just wanted to start off by thanking our two beautiful hosts today for joining us. We're going to be talking about a series today called What They Carried and What We Keep. I thought that was a very poignant name for this exhibition today. So I just want to start off with a quick introduction. Thank you for showing up for art, for memory, and for the stories that shape us, even the ones that we've never fully heard. This conversation is part of an ongoing series meant to create space for artists to speak not only about what they create, but what carries them there. The histories, the silences, the inheritances, and the questions that guide their work. Tonight's discussion is grounded in a simple but deeply layered idea: what they carried and what we keep. Across generations, there are things that were carried quietly: burdens, joy, survival, protection, wisdom, choices made without explanation, stories held without language. Nothing was passed down in full, but everything left an imprint. And so, what we keep is not always a story in its complete form. Sometimes it's a feeling, a way of moving, a sense of knowing, or even a question that refuses to leave us. In her latest exhibition, Stories We Went Looking For, Greta invites us into that space. The space between what was lived and what was shared. It asks us to consider how the weight of the past becomes the foundation of who we are today. Not simply something that we uncover, but something to honor, something to carry forward with intention. Our guest tonight moves in that space. Through her work, she traces memory, intuition, and ancestral presence, creating visual language for what has long existed beyond words. Her practice reminds us that what we inherit is not just history. It is responsibility, it is connection, and it is possibility. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Adrian and Art of Noise Gallery and Felix Pfeifle for opening this space and for trusting me for this conversation. And Felix, you could say your last name correctly.
Pfeifle.
Thank you for that. Because spaces like this matter. They don't exist without people who believe in creating and exchanging light, love, and art. And I also want to thank everyone in attendance for their attention as we embark on this journey through the lens of tonight's guests. With that, please welcome Greta Chapin-McGill.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I appreciate being here. I love the space. It's my favorite gallery in Washington, D.C., and I like little, small, intimate spaces like this because you can really see the work that's being presented. It's not overwhelmed by 10-foot ceilings. It's very intimate. It's in your face, and you have to think about it. So thank you, Adrian, for creating this space. When I first came here, I said, this is a New York gallery, and I love that.
Thank you.
I liked, last week, I enjoyed hearing at your opening, someone said, this is like a Brooklyn gallery, Bushwick. And it really is. And that's what feels good. Yeah. Well, you make it feel good too, Adrian.
Thank you.
Now, let's begin on this journey for both of you guys, your perspective on origin and inspiration. Can you guys give a little bit of sense of your origin and inspirations?
Well, I'm from Washington, D.C. Okay, that is my origin. I'm based here. I grew up here. My formative school years were here in Washington. So that is where my roots are. I love Washington because all of the museums are free here. You can go and you can look at art, you can immerse yourself in art. And that's kind of what I did. But I come from a family whereas there's like this alternative universe, I call it, where you have a group of African American citizens who sent their children for voice lessons and dance lessons, and you got a cotillion, and you got all of those things. Well, I come from that. Weight gloves all the time, church on Sunday, whole 9 yards. So my parents sent me to art school. I went to the Corcoran School of Art here in Washington, D.C., which is now part of Georgetown University, but it was a place where I went every Saturday until probably until I went to college. And that space made me love art, made me love the creation of art, enamored me with the scent of oil paint. So after going through all of that and being in a space that was just about art, my parents loved music, so music and art was what I grew up with. So I had no choice but to become an artist.
And I too went to cotillion.
Did you?
Yes, I
It was
did.
like escort. That
Yeah.
was so cool.
I went to cotillion when normally one goes to cotillion at about the age of 12. It's just on the cusp of adolescence, and we thought it was about dance. But then, much later, as an adult, one learns it's the social dance of life, and it's about manners.
Yes, absolutely.
And the punch bowl. If you remember mother getting the punch bowl to cotillion. But I grew up, I come from a really provincial background in a place called, aptly, I should say, Modesto, California. I'm a fifth generation Californian coming from a family of pioneers who arrived in California in the 1850s. And my mother's father came from a family of Mayflower sorts from Boston, and my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, whom I love so much and came up a lot in our discussions, came from a family who arrived in 1607 in Jamestown on the Susan Constant. So I came from a background in this provincial place in California, which incidentally is only 150 miles away. It's only an hour and a half away from San Francisco, but you might as well already be on your way to Omaha, Nebraska. You're already in the Midwest, in the Central Valley of California. I spent my youth searching for roots I knew were in me, and this is so much of, I think, how we naturally connected. Roots that were a part of my DNA, but were not discussed. Because in the West, the only thing of importance is to have arrived over the Sierra Nevada, even if you have to eat your kin, to arrive, if you are aware of the Donner Pass and that debacle in the mid-19th century. And I also come from a highly artistic family. Most of us are in Hollywood, so I'm from Hollywood, really. I mean, I grew up in Modesto, but everyone from my family who's creative winds up in Hollywood, creating on some level in the entertainment industry, I was an architect. But also an historian who studied in Vienna.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much you can go
But
from.
we have a lot of layers. Life has a lot of layers.
And can you guys talk about how you guys first met?
Well, I met Felix at the last show that I did here at Art of Noise. Mm-hmm. And in walks this, I call Felix is a bon vivant. Do you know what a bon vivant is? A bon vivant is a like a dandy. He's like, there's just something special about him. And so I see him and I say, wow, who's that? He's the type of person that makes you say, who is that? And want to know what his name is and why is he here and what is he thinking and what is he talking about and where is he from? So that's how we met, correct?
Yes.
And then the next thing you know, he was sitting in my living room, in my gallery, in my house, looking with two other amazing women that I met just right, you remember?
Yes.
And it turned out that they knew each other.
Yeah.
So it just became this amazing.
Yeah. Because she was from California.
California.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
From
became this
Big
amazing
Sur,
connection.
Cornell. Yeah.
But Felix is the type of person that I will say that have run into on my travels a lot. Because I run into this type of person a lot. And I enjoy his company, and we had some great conversations, and we just clicked as far as the art is concerned, and we had some great conversations about our family connection. So it was good, right?
And to that point, it seems like you guys bonded over a sense of just direction, where you guys were both very intrigued and very knowledgeable about your history and aware of its presence in your life. So could you elaborate more about that moment where you guys were just able to express and speak about your families and talk about the silences that you found within that and the things that drove you and, like the joys and the wonders that you found, or even some things that you found that were a little unsavory?
So I'm going to take this, okay?
Yeah.
We're sitting at the table, and Felix says to me, well, my grandmother said to me, I never heard a story like that. What was it she said? I never heard a story like that. We were talking about just family story, about an uncle, your uncle.
I certainly never heard that.
I certainly never heard that. That's what it was. So I have a similar, and I said, oh, well, I have this similar story. And my mother said to me, I never heard that circulated. So we realized that we were sitting there in the presence of these two families that had stories that really colored the history of the family, but were never spoken about, never talked about.
Yeah.
And I will share with you that my story is a story that has taken me to a lot of different countries and a lot of different places, and I carry a name that I don't know where it came from. No one in my family has this name, no one. And my sisters and siblings all carry the names of my father, my father's father, my great-grandfather. My sister has my grandmother's name and my great-grandmother's name. I have this name Greta that no one else has. And I tried to figure out, I asked many, many times when I was a little girl, where did the name come from? And I would always get a little brush off. You don't want to tell that story, or, oh, it came from somewhere. And as a child, now you're like, okay, whatever. Well, I come to find out it came from an actual child that was born 8 years after my mother. So fully she knew this child was born, but she never acknowledged this fact to me. And even when she left here, she wouldn't acknowledge it. So that's how tightly she held on to that story. But I felt like somehow this little girl was a part of me that I had to find. A part of me that I had to make sure that she got to the places that she wanted to go in her life. And she would get there through me. This is like my imagination has gone to Nut City at this point. But I found out that she only lived a few days, and there was some controversy about what happened to her, which I will never know. So again, what happens is you start to make up these stories. You know, you start to have dreams about these stories, about what happened and how it happened. So I'm still continuing on this journey to give her this life that I feel that she must have wanted, because it's what comes through me, is her wanting to see all these different places and know the beauty of what life was all about that she never got to see.
And that's beautiful. In the same sense as we spoke to how my cousin and I had both did an interview with my grandmother and great aunt, talking about our family history not too long ago. And one of the reasons why was I wanted to have on video record of our legacy, so my grandchildren would actually, who will never know my grandmother, will actually be able to see her face and to hear her voice and to hear those stories. And we've learned some facts about, you know, our last name, at least on my mother's side, that similar to you, where the roots of that name and where it came from. And we learned so much, and I think even now I'm so glad I have that on film, because I can actually review that. It's like, hang on, like, whoa, like that's something that I never would have known. But I also want to hear Felix's experience, because I think this is a shared experience amongst African Americans, to where your past was, I think, maybe either shielded, withheld from you, or, you know, maybe even your parents or grandparents felt ashamed of what they did, and they never passed that down. And I think part of finding yourself and having authenticity is knowing your past and where you come from, and having and maintaining legacy. So it would be very interesting here, Felix, your perspectives on, you know, what you learned as you dove into your family history, and if you found out things that you never knew before, or if you just were validated in what you knew as you continue to uncover your family's history.
Thank you. Yeah, all of that's really relevant. And by the way, I had forgotten the story of Greta, and that is so special to me, just to hear that, and to hear what you're talking about. As you say that, I think about my maternal grandmother and the fact that my nephew, who is now the only grandchild in that line of the family, will never know the breath of my grandmother and the feel of her skin and her hand touching my hand and her answering the phone and saying, hello. But you know what I've done? I saved the towel to the swimming pool. I had my own towel when I went swimming at her house, and it was lemon colored and blue, and it's just beautiful. And I kept it in a bag, and I didn't know I had kept it in a bag. And a few years ago, I came to my mother's house, and I opened this closet, and there was this bag, and I opened the bag, a plastic bag, and it was like, my grandmother died in 1998, and it still smells like her house. Mm-hmm. And I didn't say anything. My sister came in like an hour later, and I was like, here, Shelley. And she said, Grandma. So look, it's not like my grandmother didn't die in a time when we could have recorded her too. Mm-hmm. But I think for young people out there, to be able to do something like that is so important. Because once they're gone, you cannot ask any more questions, and you can't recapture that. But with regard to growing up in a place like Modesto, California, because of course there are, wherever I go in the world, people are a little baffled by who I am and where I must come from, and they're always trying to figure me out. And I was just telling my godson today, that secretary of the last crown prince of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, whom I knew back in Munich and before he died. She thought I must be Jewish. And I knew why she thought I was Jewish, because I was too curious and intellectual of an American to fit. She was German, and she thought white Americans were all a bunch of like frat boys, and so I must be Jewish if I'm this, if I go this deep in history, like I have to go to the center of it, like who the last crown prince was, if I show up at the door. So anyway, I met, well, I don't know how it came. It was just beautifully serendipitous that I came into your studio and realized the journey you're looking for. And it's a journey that I know about a lot of African Americans. And it's something I have sensed all my life, where I felt deeply separated from a past that I knew was in me, and I could not access, and I wasn't allowed to feel comfortable in accessing it. In America, we are, I'll just speak for someone of my background, because that's what I know about. In white culture, you may know, up to your great-great-grandparents or something like that, but pressing beyond, wanting to know, like, we're all descended from the ancients, so how do we tie into those ancients? Well, I could feel, it's like there was an inner compass in my mind where I had a sense growing up in Modesto, California in the 1970s and 80s when everyone was watching Brady Bunch, that I had to get to the center of things, and the center was Charlemagne. And before that, it was the Roman emperors and the Greeks. And I have had that inner compass like a motor since I was a child, since I could read. I used to run around the playground pretending like I could speak German, because I knew I must be able to speak German. Actually, I do speak German fluently, but I didn't when I was 8. And of course, then it turned out my mother is descendant of all the royal families of Europe, and she comes from that Mayflower background, and she comes from the Susan Constant background. And for me, that was something I had to connect with, because I had to be in spiritual touch with those people as much as you would like to be in touch with Greta. It doesn't, and in many cases, for me, it was really important for me to be in touch with and understand and be able to document every generation back to the ancients, because I can trace my lineage back in like 1,000 different times to Charlemagne. So that goes back like 1,200 years or something, to the year 800, 750, beyond his great-grandfather. I don't know how to explain, but what I have enjoyed in the arts in Washington, D.C. is knowing about African Americans whom I perceive to be on a similar search for ancestors to whom they may not be documented. It can't exactly be proven, but I can assure you, Greta, that when you talk about that ancestral connection and feeling connected to Egypt or what have one in Africa, whether it's documented or not, I have the same sense of connection. Mine happens to be documented. And I know that now I understand yours to be perfectly as real as what I feel, because there's no explaining me without them. It just isn't. And thank God I found them. Thank God for myself. I found them because I felt like a fraud for so long. You know, I mean, I have been like this, you know, in an ascot since I was 8 years old. Well, you tried wearing an ascot in the 1980s in the Central Valley of California. You know, you're pulling some grandiose moves that can put you on the margins very quickly. But to me, it was as natural as it must have been for one of my 16th century ancestors to be wearing a ruff. You know, those big giant things.
Right.
So anyway, that my connection to Greta was to go into these maps of exploration, knowing that it's in our DNA, and knowing that our intuition is right in many regards, and our DNA doesn't lie. Our DNA does not lie. Our parents lie to us, yes, or our grandparents lie to us to protect us or to shield us, but our DNA does not lie, and there's no escaping that. I mean, we can talk about our love family. Oh, my friends are my family. They are, but your DNA is your family, and there's no getting away from it.
No, that's very fair. And it's interesting in the sense of essentially like, you bring up so many points. Like it's hard for me to figure out where exactly to go, because I think we really try to find ourselves. And I think so many people at this stage in life right now are looking for different ways to be authentic and to be themselves. And I think knowing your past is definitely, you know, meaningful in that right. But what do you think? I think one of the things that I picked up on was just like the living through experiences of your elders that you had no, you know, awareness of, or they had no awareness of you, and, you know, things of that nature. How do you think their journey has kind of imprinted on you? Like, as you say that you felt in tune and you felt like you've had a natural resonance to places or people or things, like what do you feel like in your personal experience are like some tangible things that you know, you just felt like through that experience? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I do.
Well, since you don't know what these experiences are, I have lived an entire lifetime just through feeling those experiences, if that makes sense. So I always knew that, for some reason, I always knew that I wanted to cross the water, go see what was on the other side. I'm a dreamer at heart, so I could spend hours by myself thinking of, you know, what's over there. If I got on a plane or I got on a boat and I went out into the water, we talked about the water earlier, right? And I went out into the water, what would I find out there, you know? So I've never been afraid of going someplace by myself, being able to explore the world, what's in front of me by myself. So I have never said no to an opportunity, never. I always have said yes when I decided I'm going to go to New York by myself, alone, me, at 19, 20 years old. I'm leaving school, I'm going to New York. My parents had a fit. But I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I couldn't be afraid, because I do feel that if you allow other people's thoughts and fears and apprehensions rule your life or rule any decisions that you make, what you come out with is regret. And if you make a move and someone tells you, no, don't do that, but you really want to make that move, if you live with that regret, you will always say in your mind, what if I had turned left at that corner? When my heart was telling me to turn left, what if I had turned left? What would have happened if I didn't listen to this other person's fears and turn right? So I fight against that. I fought against that. And I've always decided I'm going to go with what the universe, God, or whomever you want to call it or them or him or her, I've always made it my point to listen to that voice that speaks to me, even when everybody else tells me I'm wrong. So I never have regret, and anything that has happened to me, it's happened to me because I wanted it to happen to me. I called it into my life. I manifested it. And all of these paintings that you see here are pieces of places that I've been, pieces of people that I've seen, pieces of something that I read that manifested itself onto these paper, onto this canvas. Once I figured out that color and form is something that I wanted to deal with for the rest of my life, even when everyone told me, oh, you'll never be able to make a living with that, you have to do something so you can fall back on, don't you want to be a receptionist, you know? No, that's not what I want to be. This is what I want to do, and I will tell you that I have never in my life worked for anybody, ever. I worked for myself. And I worked for myself to create all of these things and the thousands of things that are in my storage in Washington and in my storage in New Jersey and in different places all over the world, that I don't have the regret of I didn't do it. And I'm happy with that.
And would you say that that voice that guides you to turn left, when your heart tells you to turn left, do you believe that that's your ancestors?
Absolutely.
And what percentage of that do you think is just your own natural intuition and will, and what part of that is ancestors, or do you think those are both aligned?
I believe in the voice that guides me. I believe in that it's not going to steer me wrong. It's not going to tell me to go left when I should really be going right. As long as I listen, as long as I don't allow someone who really doesn't know what's going on inside of here, I'm the only one that knows and that voice knows. As long as I listen to that, it always turns out somehow to be the right thing. And once that happens to you a few times, 3 or 4 times, and it continues to happen, then it becomes much easier to listen. Much easier to say yes.
One of the things I would like to say about your work that I just found so fascinating was that painting in the middle over there. That was a vision of, I don't know what it meant to you at the time. Did it mean something about your friends?
Well, that painting I did in 1970.
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
I think it was. So that was at a time when I felt like I'm an artist. I know what I'm doing. And it has stayed with me a long, long time. That particular piece, I have a lot of pieces from that time, but that particular piece stayed with me a long time. It was a part of an exploration of what colors can I do, you know, when your teachers are telling you, setting up different still lifes for you to do. But this is where I wanted to go, and it's because I had already done 100,000 still lifes before.
Yeah. I think because Greta's work bespeaks these sort of epic journeys, the journeys that are like they from in a classical sense, they could span many generations. They could span many centuries. It's fascinating to me it was fascinating to me when I came upon that painting, for instance, because it was as if she had laid out an image that she would revisit later in her journeys. Because to me, it speaks of her arrival in the south of France, where she lived for some time, which then is also evident on either side in this sort of Jean Cocteau 1930s image. It just, the whole, I just feel it is suffused in the psyche of the south of France among, well, of course, my favorite, Jean Genet. Have you read? Have you picked it? Okay, yeah, Our Lady of the Flowers, don't forget. And so, the journeys of the mind and the journeys of the mind, the soul, and the body that can take place not in especially just chronological order, but what is it when you preordain, not preordain, but predict or forecast a journey you will be on at another time in your life. And that's why those read together fascinate me. With regard to ancestry, I feel so relieved that in my lifetime, and thanks, I do have to say, a lot to computer technology that has expanded our ability to find these things out about our families and such. I feel so relieved to have come where I am, to be in touch with documented ancestors, because I make sense to myself now. I'll never forget when I called my godmother and revealed to her the extent of certain aspects of my mother's ancestry, especially. My father's ancestry is more straightforward. They're like good German peasants back to Martin Luther kind of thing. And that's all documented from Martin Luther forward. But my godmother said, "Oh, that explains everything about you." And it did explain me. And just to give you an idea, my mother is fourth generation Californian, living out on, she comes from one of the first white families to arrive in California. And my brother-in-law and I call her Plymouth Rock. And the reason we call her Plymouth Rock is because it's still the winter of 1621, when half the Mayflower arrivals died because the winter was so bitter. And she has the constitution of that. She will survive if she's the last being standing in a dark forest, because she comes from a line of people who made their way charging. They probably killed a few people along the way. Some of them got killed. I've actually read about the ones who got attacked by Indians and died, or Native Americans. She's fierce, and it explains her, and that's why she's Plymouth Rock. And I also realize, I have a constitution. There have been times when I've liked to escape on drugs and have a really good time, and I don't have a good time. I don't escape well, because my constitution is so ordered that I am such an orderly Protestant Virgo that I will never escape. There's no point in trying to navigate away from it and think I'm going to be someone else, because I don't know,
you are you.
I am it. Yeah, I am I, and I can't. There is no drug strong enough to unroot me from needing to be somewhere at 8 a.m. the next morning. It takes a long time to grow up to that. I'm going to be 57 this year, and I've only learned this in my late middle age, to be comfortable with my natural way.
And do you guys feel like, from when you guys grew up and were trying to find your authentic self and ways to express yourself, what advice would you have for people trying to find their way now? And do you think that it's been a paradigm shift from the past, in the sense of, do you think people are more able to be their authentic selves now? Or do you feel like it's actually more difficult because there's so many different projections and, ideas of who you should be, and examples of just like, success out here? I think everybody to kind of give you more frame for my question, I think everybody's kind of following others, and it's a copycat kind of world. How do you root yourself in authenticity, and how do you feel like, do you feel like this is the best time in history to be a creative or to be able to express yourself, or do you think it's the same as before?
Well, I actually think history repeats itself, that this is a circular world we live in, and that I look back to like the French Revolution. The French Revolution, what took down the government was the price of bread. Okay? What's taking down the government is the price of gas. Same thing, different time. To me, women in that era were very much in tune and aware with where their power was located and how to use it. I think that women now are also in tune with where their power is located and where they use it differently, and it's more out front than it was before. But I just don't think that we as human beings change that much. I used to think that there was a place in the mountains somewhere where they stamped out different personalities, because if you really look at it, I've met enough people to know that people have personalities, and they'll show it to you, and please do believe it, because that's who they are. And there are not that many different types, I mean, you run into the same type all the time. So I do feel that in 2026, there are women that want to be housewives and raise children as there were in 1850. There are men who, want to be controlling, and as there were then. So I just don't think that people are that much different than they were or are going to be. We are human beings, and we have certain interests and foibles, and we'll always have that. It's just a different time, and we are dressed in different clothes and eat different things, but I think people are inherently the same.
I can agree to that. And I would say that taking it to a more biological level, if you think about evolution, how long does it take for things to evolve? I think people, again, how we spoke earlier, to how we disassociate with nature and we think that we aren't organisms. I think if you take it and look at it in that sense, it's like, wow, if it takes 10,000 years for something to evolve and to adapt to an environment based on environmental stressors, it's like, well, of course it's going to take humans a long time to evolve, and we ultimately are similar. But I think it's interesting, because I think as a former, young black woman who, generations before you were never able to just travel independently around the world and to present art and to have very novel experiences like that, I think I'd love to hear what your experiences were. If there were examples of, blatant discrimination and misogyny, in the art spaces where your work wasn't, uplifted as much as others? And do you think that has shifted in recent times to where, it's a little bit more equitable?
Well, I don't know. I mean, more equitable. Let me think about that. I will say that, in my opinion, there are 5 levels to this art game. The first level is white men. They get the breaks first. Second is black men. They get the breaks, the breaks second. Third is white women. The fourth, I would say, is everything else that filters down. And the last is black women. We are the last ones. And I don't know whether that's changing. I hope it is. Sometimes I see that it is, and sometimes I feel that it's not. But I don't think that, I have never allowed that type of attitude to deter me from anything that I was doing, whether it was trying to be the only black girl in the room in Berlin, walking a runway, okay? Or the only black girl in the room at the Venice Biennale, or the only black girl in the room in Nice, sitting in a hotel bar, trying to get myself a little drink, trying to just live my life without people thinking anything about me. And I will say that over there it's much easier than it is over here. So I just really do feel that I think I probably get this from my dad. I am not afraid of that. And I've never been afraid of how people perceive me to be, how they perceive me to look, how they perceive me to think, because I know that whatever I'm thinking and doing is right for me. And that to me is the epitome of being an artist. You have to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, then you're going to have a problem. No matter who you are. And I've met a lot of artists who are, very world famous artists that have said to me, well, Greta, you have to be you. And that's the best advice I ever got. And it's so funny, I've gotten it from a lot of the men in this industry. You have to just be you. And so that's what I try to be. Whether I'm accepted or whether I'm not, that's in someone else's brain. I always accept me. Always.
Do we have any questions from the audience about anything or comments? Okay. All right.
I think that your art is such a great example to young people for what you provide a map. To me, they're maps. I look at your work in terms of maps and aerial views and things into scenes we might discover. To me, they are aerial maps and views into other dimensions, I think, for young people of all backgrounds, I might think, to shape our sense of the world and our sense of time and ourselves as we need to shape them, and how our intuition drives us, how perhaps our DNA drives us, how our ego drives us. And you make such a remarkable example of that, which is, it's really extraordinary. To me, it's about the anathema. It's about resisting bourgeois values. And that is, you asked a question earlier, and you said something about we've mostly been the same kind of people all along. the bourgeois character is a total anathema to world culture. There's nothing organic about the bourgeois character. It's totally invented and fake, and based on ads and marketing campaigns. And luckily, we happen to live in the 21st century in late capitalism, which makes it all too evident that it's all fake. And there's nothing organic about it. Part of my compass in growing up in a place like Modesto, California, in an upper middle class setting, and living what was kind of like a suburban kind of life, is knowing that my compass told me there's an organic sense of values in the world, and I embraced it and rejected the fake trappings of bourgeois culture. And to me, that is essential for a creative soul. To be free of, we have to support ourselves, right? We can't be fantasists and think that Daddy Warbucks is coming to the rescue. We have to support ourselves. It helps to have a trust fund or marry. Well, I have neither. But to me, living the way you do, I think that could also suggest why she and I get along so well. We lead totally unconventional lives. There is nothing conventional about my life, and I do my path, and it's a hard path.
It is.
There's a lot of struggle, but because beauty is such a central part of it, I might make it look pretty. But it's a beauty that's rooted to an organic sensibility that is happening in those paintings. And those paintings, to me, I hope that young people can see like another dimension, a looking glass to walk through. Because that's what it takes, I think. I think that that's what it's going to take to survive in this century, is having an ancient sense of the organic qualities of being human and being on this planet, and the humility that we have to navigate it as well. That we are not the individuals. We are not, each individual is so special, but we have to recognize what the limits of our individuality are, because we're just little specks in a giant spectrum of time and organisms.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something to definitely think about, is just like, I think oftentimes we like to inflate our self-image and to project that we are something great, and because like you said, we ultimately have to always believe in ourselves. But I think it's also being present and realizing that, hey, life is temporal. Things do come to an end. Things are definitely finite. My reality is not everybody else's reality, and also understanding that, again, you are a speck of dust in this earth. And then, like we were talking about with just how you were saying you were able to track your lineage back to Charlemagne, if we were to think about that same amount of time period in the grand scheme of Earth's history, that's if it was 24 hours in a day was Earth's history, that would be not even a second of that time. So I think oftentimes we lose sight of that.
Yeah.
But to bring it back to just believing in yourself and having that light, how do you feel like in your lives, when you've accomplished something that you have, warranted as great in your life, how have you bounced back to achieve something greater after? Because I think so often people achieve goals in their lives, and once they achieve that goal, it's hard for them to find inspiration to strive for something else. Or they say, hey, I want to have a family. And it's like, yes, you've gotten a family, but you could get a family at 21 years old. So it's like, well, what do you do then with the rest of your life? Or you say, oh, I always wanted to be a doctor. And it took you 8 years and you became a doctor, but now you're 37 and you still have the rest of your life to live. So my question to you guys is, once you've made a great achievement in your lives, or let's say you finished a series of paintings that you were very proud of and were very well received, how do you then get off of that high and rekindle that fire?
Well, there's never a high to get off of. If I finished all of these paintings, I mean, when I say to you that this is agonizing for me, it is agonizing for me. This is 6 months of creating some new things and putting some other things together, figuring out where is this going, how is it going to go, and then I just live for the day of installation. Once the day of installation is over, I can guarantee you I will leave out of this door and there will be something in my email that says, okay, here, we would like for you to do this. And I'm off. There are so many ideas. I have been so many places. There are so many things that I have wanted to do, wanted to paint, wanted to write about, wanted to talk about, that I probably would need a whole nother lifetime to do it. And I feel like there's still places in this world that I want to go. And places that I want to go back to. Like, I want to go back to Egypt in the worst kind of way. And I will go back, because something that I want to do. I mean, one of the things that I found out when I was there was that there was a queen who just came out of nowhere. She was not from any noble family or anything, but she married the king. When the kings were only marrying their sisters, their cousins, and their mothers, those were the only people they were involved with. So there's always another idea to be had. There's always, no one has a tag on how many ideas they can have or how many places you can go. There's always another place. And as long as there's another place, it will give me another idea, and I will be able to expand on it to something like this if Adrian will give me another opportunity.